Our Standard Bank is showcasing the exhibition A Continent on the Move, Perspectives on Africa and its Infrastructure from their art collection at the World Economic Forum in Davos. Now, the exhibition forms part of its commitment to celebrating African culture and just reinforcing the importance of art as a vehicle for cultural exchange and social progress. The 8 featured works, drawn from artists such as Irma Stern, Maggie Laubser, Nhlengethwa, Derrick Nxumalo and the collaborative duo Hasan and Hussain Essop, act as a representation of the continent's ongoing evolution. For more on the exhibition, we're joined by Standard Bank's Head of the Arts, Dr Same Mdluli. Dr Mdluli, very good morning. Thanks for joining us. Welcome.
Good morning and thank you for having me.
Good to have you on the show this morning. And I see that Standard Bank, well, in a vibrant display of African culture and transformation and ingenuity, they partnered with the Africa Collective. Just take us through that.
Yeah, so this was a partnership between Standard Bank and Africa Collective to host this event or this exhibition as part of the sideline activities that are happening at Davos. And of course, we wanted to do it in such a way that kind of highlights Standard Bank's participation at the forum, which are artworks that are kind of portraying the infrastructure in Africa and the kind of opportunities that are available here, but also the continent's evolution over the years and the centuries.
But above and beyond, it is also a reflection of the merger between art and leadership, eh? How does Standard Bank weave into that kind of partnership?
No, it's an important kind of exchange. I think it's about highlighting that art is not just a decorative kind of activity, but that it highlights important social issues and also acts as like I said, a cultural exchange, but also in demonstrating the social progress that Africa especially has undergone.
Right. You know, we may have so many different conversations, at different locations. I mean, the conversation that we may have here with regards to the arts and cultural space may be different to the conversation that we may have at international platforms like the WEF. So what kinds of conversations were had there in terms of just highlighting what you just said?
So I think it's important that firstly, it profiles Africa in a different light. I think art is a very powerful medium or vehicle that kind of shapes the image of the continent, right? And that artists have a responsibility, for example, to do that in the most authentic way. And so for me, I think in selecting these artworks, it was about being sensitive to which kinds of artworks would really kind of speak to our messaging around our participation at the forum, and how that starts to shape the continent in a very positive light, that Africa is not just a passive participant there, and a very kind of, it has its own agency, and it's an agent of change, so to speak, And it was important that these artworks kind of demonstrate this in not just what is portrayed in them, but the kind of message that they are kind of alluding to.
And it's also quite heartwarming, the fact that the messaging also finds expression in the themes in this year, which is, the ongoing resilience by Africans and as well as transformation. Just take us through that. Precisely.
I mean, if you look at the Maggie Laubser, for example, that you'll see on the screen, is farm workers to look at agriculture, right, and the evolution of agriculture in Africa. You have this beautiful Derrick Nxumalo image of a suburbia. Nhlengethwa with this very raw portrayal of urban life. These are all, I think, that kind of illustrate the dynamic social transformation of the continent. There's a beautiful Irma Stern of orchids, which shows, a kind of romanticized landscape of Africa, right? Before modernization. But I think it's important because these are kind of illustrating the strides that the continent have made, in not just kind of, presenting itself as like I said, a continent that is not passive, but contributes on global scales in a very, very powerful way.
And I must say that all these artists you've just mentioned, they push the envelope in terms of just sharing and reflecting South Africa's social fabric. So how were they selected? Were you looking for legends in the game, or were you looking for a messaging that sort of resonated with your core principles in the art space and as well as the themes of this exhibition?
Yeah, I think it's both. You know, I mean, if you look at Irma Stern, for example, which is a very important artist, South African artist. Sam Nhlengethwa is a contemporary artist who has been making work and exhibiting on global platforms for many, many years. So it's about, I think, that African artists are also participants in the global arena in terms of, you know, progressing the cultural arts and culture from Africa to the rest of the world. Yeah.
And I quite wonder whether you know, a discussion was had in terms of just coercing the government to convince all young people in South Africa and on the continent to take the arts and culture as a vehicle for their livelihoods. Because at this point in time, I know that so many young people just look at culture as a hobby or as you know, something to pass time.
Yeah.
So culture and arts in its entirety, of course, can be a vehicle for livelihoods. Was that conversation had? It
was, and it is. I think it's a way of also illustrating the kind of aspirations, right, future aspirations that the continent holds, not just for young people, but that there's also kind of this path that you can take as a career, as an artist, for example, and land up on platforms like Davos, for example. Yeah.
And then what has been the response so far from the exhibition?
I think it's been great. We wanted to show the original artworks, but obviously that's kind of a logistical kind of complexity around sending the original art. So we did copies, really beautiful copies of these, and it also allows us to reproduce these so that people have or the people that are going to be attending this event and the exhibition have something to take away with, some kind of memorabilia. And in that way, I think it's very important because it means you are kind of remaining in people's consciousness.
Indeed, and we're basically exporting our creativity to the world.
Yes.
Any plans to bring this particular event here in South Africa?
Well, it was a very small selection of artworks that was about, you know, giving a glimpse not only of Standard Bank's kind of commitment to supporting the arts over the years, but our extensive collection, which is very impressive. Yeah.
And how do artists become part of the Africa Creative?
So Africa Collective is a platform that it's an information and an exchange platform that's about profiling Africa on global stages. And they do different kinds of activities, of which visual arts is one of them. And so if you are if you know the collective, you can sign up to join the different initiatives. They also do different projects throughout the year that are about creating opportunities where Africa is kind of presented at world economic forums, right? That we're not just a footnote, so to speak, that we are also equal participants in some of these platforms,
All right, Dr. Mdluli, great chatting to you. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me.
Great stuff. Well, Standard Bank exhibition celebrates Africa as a continent on the move at Africa Collective in Davos in Switzerland. We just spoke to Dr. Same Mdluli, the Standard Bank's head of arts, on the exhibition.